Now the goals, now this comes to complement obviously the more traditional building design concerns of economy, utility, durability, and comfort. And the final goal is, after all, to use less energy, not because we have set it as a target in the EU 2020 strategy, but I would like to think of it because it hurts our pocket. Put it as simple as that, and I'm going to get to that shortly, and why did I end up thinking that way? And something that is rather more subtle is to reduce our building's carbon footprint. I suppose we have an idea of what the carbon footprint may be. Well, if not, anything that we do contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. And this translates in terms of carbon dioxide equivalence. So suppose that we manufacture 5 plastic bags. That contributes 1 kilogram of carbon dioxide being sent to the atmosphere. Or suppose that we take our car and we travel a distance of about 6-7 kilometers. That contributes to about 1 kilogram of carbon dioxide going in the atmosphere. So you understand what we mean by carbon footprint of a building. Now, the energy efficiency in the construction sector. What I'm going to talk about is some basic concepts that come to us in the design stages of a building, some major steps that we take into the project's life cycle. All right, and when we speak of energy design, obviously, we're trying to achieve the aforementioned. We use different terms. We use green buildings, sustainable homes, zero-emission buildings, and so forth, but it all comes down to the same thing. It all comes down to using certain principles. For instance, better design. How do we orient our house? And this is what I'm going to say. How do we use concepts of cross-ventilation for cooling, for instance? Because we take examples from Europe. And what we tend to neglect is the fact that I am sweating right now. And it's in the middle of winter. Yeah, I'm overweight, I know. But at the same time, our countries, Malta, Cyprus, we have different concerns to keep in mind. We are not so much concerned about heat saving or heating. We're more concerned about cooling. So how do we make use of certain concepts to achieve those? And how do we use the sun that is so plentiful in our countries, not only for natural lighting, but also for using it in renewable energy sources that I'm going to get down to. So basically, this slide gives us the roadmap that I'm going to follow in the next few minutes. All right? So having said this, I'm starting off with some of the basics of bioclimatic design. All right? Wow, fancy terms. And first things first, when we build a new thing, we have to situate it properly in our plot. All right? We are in the northern hemisphere, and the sun has a specific trajectory. It faces the southern part of the skies of the horizon for most of the time. Those arrows there, please neglect the numbers. The absolute numbers mean very little. We are talking about the comparison. This is the solar heat gain, the dark arrow during the winter, and the lighter arrow the white arrow during the summer. All right, so we can see that the solar heat gain in the winter in the southern face of a building is much higher than its counterpart during the summer. We can also see how the roof is a part of our structure that gets affected by this solar heat gain quite a bit. So we have to keep these things in mind when we situate. So we put high-impact rooms, I suppose, high-density rooms of a house on the southern part of the structure. For instance, I would put my kid's bedroom on the southern part of the house. It gets warmed better during winter as opposed to for the summer. I would keep my garage in the north. It's colder. My car is not going to be affected much if it's too cold. All right? So we understand how an architect or a civil engineer takes these things into consideration when we orient a house. Landscaping, it's something that we started forgetting how to use. If one goes to Cyprus these days, we're going to see all sorts of tropical plants being plentiful. We start going away from the traditional. Yet, if we use landscaping properly, we can achieve a lot of energy savings, energy efficiency. And what do I mean by that? Planting a deciduous tree on the southern face of the house, it can provide shading during the summer, but in the winter, the leaves having fallen off, it can let valuable sun rays come through. We can shade different appliances that we may have. I've noticed, just standing on the balcony of the hotel room, I've noticed a lot of the air conditioning units being up on top of the roof, being exposed to the sun. Is that the best practice? I don't think so in terms of energy efficiency. One of the things that we can do is shade those compressors for the air conditioning units, for instance. And I'm going to get to some other things that I didn't notice from my hotel's balcony earlier this morning. We can use trellises to shade specific parts of the house and yet allow sun rays to come through during the time that we want them to come through. We can even use some evergreens to protect us from winter breezes, for instance, that come from the north. That's another tactic that we usually use in proper landscaping. We can mediate breezes, or we can guide breezes during the summer from the south. We can even use the trees to cool our house, because if the summer wind blows through the leaves of a tree, that evaporation that is caused from the tree itself, evapotranspiration, it's going to cool the air and it's going to provide a nice, comfortable environment in our homes. More comfortable environment, as comfortable it can get, I suppose, in the summer. Which brings us again to an issue of cross-ventilation. Cross-ventilation, it's something that we ended up forgetting through the years. When I was growing up, we used to open our doors and windows more often than we do now. Now my wife yells because dust is going to get in the house. So in any case, it's an important thing. It's an important thing to design our home, not only to create this cooling effect that we much need in our countries, but obviously to flush out the bad air. We have a lot of chemicals in the house that they need to be interchanged, glues and adhesives, different things that we use in tapestry in the house and so forth, in carpets. So it's not only about energy, it's about indoor environmental health as well. So yes, we should take into consideration at the design stages of a house the direction of the winds and how can we create these corridors for ventilation, for air to go through. We should maximize this airflow by aligning doors and windows. My own house, for instance, I have a nice big window on the northern side of the house, and it faces a wall. Thank you, architect. I can give you his name if you want. Now, we should consider using such things as ridge vents, and I'm going to show some pictures of what I am referring to in a minute. Or we can use some simple common sense. Keep our windows open when we can. Keep inside doors and corridors in the house open for air to circulate. It's going to make a difference.